when we were talking to James Cameron, he started saying, well, Arnold's eating, mostly plant-based these days. So we thought, well, it'd be great to get his thoughts and, everything. And then people have come out recently saying, oh, well, Arnold's not actually vegan. And but he never said he was vegan in the film. He even says maybe start with 1 day a week.
Let's face it, we all know the importance of a good, balanced nutrition diet, but the truth is it can get really challenging to get all the nutrients you need every single day when you're running a very busy lifestyle or even running your own business. And if you're anything like me, you probably don't want to resort to a multivitamin pill that is filled with chemicals, binders, and artificial ingredients. This is why I'm so glad that I found Vivo Life's Thrive. It's a revolutionary health supplement that has all the power of a multivitamin, but that is made with 100% plant-based and natural ingredients that you can actually pronounce and actually recognize. Things like kale, turmeric, baobab, or even spinach. It's been backed by over 50 independent studies and was actually formulated by a nutritionist. That's why each scoop holds the antioxidant equivalent of 10 servings of fruit and vegetables, along with 15 essential minerals and vitamins, including B12, vitamin D, and zinc. The truth is you just never know what your day is going to be like. That's why I just make it really easy and simple for myself. I add a scoop in either some water, my shakes, or my tea. It's delicious, it's nutritious, and it gets me focused for the rest of the day, and my energy levels have never been better. And here's the best part in it all. Vivo Life are so confident in the quality of the product that they've took over 5 years to design that if you're not satisfied after 30 days, they'll give you a full refund, no questions asked, and you can even keep the product. If you want to try Thrive for yourself, you can go over to www.vivolife.co.uk and use the promo code MARK to get 10% off your first order. Podcasting is one of the most effective ways to grow your business, build an audience, and give your brand a voice. But the idea of launching can frankly feel a little daunting. What kind of gear or software should you use? What if you don't like the sound of your own voice? How to get great guests to come on the show? And how do you get people to actually listen once you've published your podcast? Well, you could go and find out on your own through trial and error, and that might take you forever. Or you could save yourself a ton of time and a ton of money by grabbing a spot on my brand new online video course, How to Go From Naught to Launch, that you can take from the comfort of your own home. That's right, I've made the process of launching a successful podcast from scratch super easy. So if you're ready and you want to stop wasting time, head over to theunconventionalists.com, click on online courses, and grab yourself a seat and use the discount code PODCASTTRIBE to get 20% off the entire program. I can't wait to see you in there, but more importantly, I can't wait to listen to your podcast. Hi, and welcome back to the Unconventionals podcast. I'm your host, Mark Leruste, and this is the show about what it's really like to turn your message into a movement. I'm really excited about today's guest. As you'll hear from our conversation, it's been a long time in the making, and I'm super grateful that he's made the time to come in the studio today. I am, of course, talking about James Wilks, who is the producer behind the latest documentary film called The Game Changers. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. It'll be available on Netflix on the 16th of October globally. But we're going to dive deeper into his story, how he went from being an MMA fighter, fighting in the UFC, going through injury, but more importantly, putting this message out into the world in a big way and in a really dramatic and impactful kind of way. So without further ado, James, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mark. Appreciate it.
Yeah, really excited to have you, man. So, I mean, I've got to ask you, one of the first questions I had was, how you deal with all the media frenzy? Like, I know I've seen, even just on your Instagram alone, you seem to be like on all these different shows and with various lengths and various styles. Like, how's the whole crazy media thing been?
Yeah, it's been exciting because it shows people are interested, right, in the subject matter. So, I haven't been on TV for a while since, being the Ultimate Fighter. Sure. So, a little bit nervous the first couple of times, being on live television and stuff. But yeah, no, it's going well. Yeah,
100%. I mean, again, we talked a bit off camera before that. One of the things I try and do is research quite a bit around my guests, because I know it must be, like, actually, like, this is a weird question, but how is it to recount the same story over and over again? Because every time you go on a podcast, like, so how did you begin? And you go through the whole story again. Like, how is it for you to actually do that?
Yeah, I'm a little bit tedious. Yeah. You know, it's just like watching the film now. I've seen it like 500 times.
Yeah,
so.
I bet.
But no, it's fine. It makes it easier to get the sound bites more succinct, you know, over time. So.
Cool. How did the London premiere go?
Great. Yeah, it was really well received. So really happy about that. Same in LA and New York. It's just been going really well.
Yeah. Where did you guys host it in London?
It was called the Electric Theatre.
Okay.
It's like linked to the Soho House.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Good turnout.
Nice spot. Yeah, really good.
Mate, this has been years in the making.
Yeah, like absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if this is true. I'd love to hear your. Like, I heard that the first kind of idea that you were playing with was 2012.
Yeah, it was like 2011, 2012. So bought a used camera off Craigslist.
Yeah.
Called Everett Motta, who's the director of photography for the Ultimate Fighter.
Okay.
Asked him what camera to buy, what sound equipment.
Yeah.
Went on YouTube, learned how to do the 3-point lighting for interview setup. And then started working with my partner, Joseph Pace, who's the other producer. And we sort of just started shooting stuff, knew that some of that wouldn't get used. And then 2013, we started raising some funds. Yeah. We got the producer from a film called Forks Over Knives, doing some sort of exploratory filming.
Yeah.
But then in 2014, we felt we had some really powerful stories.
Yeah.
We needed a master storyteller. And we needed the footage to be of the highest quality, really.
Because you shot some stuff by then, yeah?
Like we shot some stuff. We shot a little sizzle.
I'm not as happy as the quality that I kind of want to be.
Well, it's just more that we needed like the high-speed cameras, and we wanted it in 4K.
Yeah.
And just because like the demographic that's sort of it's going to appeal to the most, they're watching sports, so they're used to watching ESPN or UFC or NFL, so you've got to have that, the right cameras and the right footage.
100%.
So we put it on hold in 2014, where we sort of really tried to assemble the best crew possible.
Yeah.
And that's when James Cameron came on board.
Yeah.
And then our director, Louie, Psihoyos, who has the most award-winning documentary of all time. Dan
Clove, right?
Yeah. Dan Sweetlick, who's a 2-time Eddie winner, which is the best award you can get for editors. And so just assembled like in a really amazing team to put the documentary together.
Yeah, and the way you say it, it sounds like it's such a succinct way, right? But I've heard you talk about this in different lengths, and it sounded like it was a bit of a crazy dream to actually get him as a director. You approached him at first just for information. You were like, hey, who would you recommend that we could approach as a director? And the guy was like, actually, I'm interested. Yeah,
he just said, I can help you guys, and didn't know what he meant, really. And then a couple of weeks later, we followed up and said, so what did you mean by... Because at the time, Louie had 4 films that were being offered to him to make, and he already won the Academy Award and the Sundance Awards and like 70 other awards for his film, The Cove.
Yeah.
So we thought that we really wanted him as director, but we didn't know if we'd be able to get him. And so when he said, no, when I say help, I mean I'll help you make it, and I'll be the director. So that was really exciting, and it just sort of snowballed from there. That obviously helped with getting James Cameron on board. It just sort of grew.
Because he saw the documentary Fork Over Knives, and that really moved him in some way. He went home. I think I heard you say cleared his whole closet.
Jim Cameron, yeah,
that's right. And then came on board because he believed also in the message and what you guys were trying. So before we dive into that deeper, one thing I was looking at, and I think one thing I would have said, because I've seen the documentary, and anybody listening, I really recommend you go and check it out. You can actually pre-rent it on iTunes or watch it right now on iTunes. Yep. It'll be on Netflix, right? 16th of October?
Yeah, so it's currently on all the major transactional VOD platforms like Google Play, iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, all that sort of stuff. And actually, within a week, it became the best-selling documentary of all time on iTunes.
Is that mad? Like I know you're saying it now, like if it's like, but I'm just thinking with 2019 at the time of recording this episode, the idea was in 2011. I mean, this is 8 years almost in the making, and now it's all coming together. Like, does it feel surreal? Like, are there moments you're just going like, this is mad, or is it always something you envisioned?
I mean, it's strange because we always sort of pictured having James Cameron on board as executive producer. We imagined getting Arnold in it. And so everything that we basically set out to achieve, we were fortunate to be able to achieve.
Okay.
And with the team that we've got, it's just really incredible.
Yeah. So one thing I want to take back is people listening to the show love the kind of the origin stories. And I know you've probably gone through this quite a bit. But I was looking at it, and it feels like you come from a family of fighters, of warriors in some way. Your uncle was quite high up in karate. Your dad was in kung fu, and I think I heard you say that your granddad forged his birth certificate to go. That's
what the story in the family is. That he was I think he was like 14 or 15 when he went into the army, and then he fought in World War II because he really wanted to fight. So apparently he faked his birth certificate to get in. So so I think fighting's in the blood, and then I was also inspired by Bruce Lee movies, and that really got me into martial arts as well.
But then something happened. Like you were training in Taekwondo, I think it was, or karate.
No. So when I was 15, I got like attacked on the street and beaten up. And I'd already trained some karate and some taekwondo, and then I started realizing that the forms that you practice just weren't realistic enough to be training in. So I really started digging into what the best martial arts were and the best parts of each martial art, and sort of followed Bruce Lee's concept of research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is specifically your own. So that was his search for truth in combat, and I sort of mirrored that and started studying lots of different styles.
Yeah. And one thing I didn't know, but I heard you talk about the fact that actually, because you got into mixed martial arts, but that wasn't like your main gig.
Right.
Like you started in basically training like elite government force agencies, and not what the technical term is, from the navies. Actually, when did you get to America? This is one thing I haven't heard you too much talk about. Like when?
So I went to America in 2000. So I finished my degree at Bournemouth University.
Okay. What did you study?
So it's land-based enterprise, it was called, but it was basically like business and land management, although it was a Bachelor of Science degree because it looked at like land use and how you could use that land for different things. Basically looked at the diversification of land use from the primary sector like agriculture and mining into the tertiary sector like leisure and tourism. Because of increased efficiency in agriculture, more imports, there was more land available in the UK to to diversify and do other things, and so it looked at like those land types and what you could do, demographics around those lands, and so didn't do anything with the degree.
As very rarely people do, right?
But so I actually studied more martial arts while I was in college than I did for my degree. But so I studied that until 2000, and then got my degree, and then went to the States for 6 months. And I went to train with Paul Vunak, who developed the unarmed combat program for the Navy SEALs, the rapid assault tactics. And
sorry to interrupt, but you went to the States just like that, or did you have an idea in mind of where you were?
So I was just going for 6 months just to train martial arts.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah, and then my plan was to come back, get a job.
Okay.
Maybe move to London and get a job or something. But I just went out there and I just loved it. Right, the weather was great. The martial arts was incredible. Like at the time, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is like really a sort of like grappling is an essential part of becoming a well-rounded fighter. And there was only one black belt in the whole of the United Kingdom at the time.
Who was it? Do you remember?
His name's Mauricio Motto Gomez. So he was Roger Gracie's father.
Okay.
And so he was the only one could really train with here. But you went out to the States and there was Jiu-Jitsu schools, like quite a few of them in Orange County, and then trained with Paul Vunak and Jeet Kune Do and the Filipino martial arts. And also with Dan Inosanto, which is Bruce Lee's main training partner.
No way.
So
because you were a fan of Bruce Lee as a kid, right?
Yeah,
so was it a bit mad to be training with the guy who used to...
Yeah, it's incredible. Like Dan Inosanto is still incredible. I'm not sure how old he is now, but in his 70s and just incredible shape and still studying. I think he got his black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, a few years ago.
Yeah.
So he's incredible. He's also an historian, so he looks at the history of martial arts. Like why boxing went from sort of this position with the hand on the hip, and then to this, and then to this.
Yeah.
It's interesting actually because one of the reasons that happened is the Americans went to the Philippines.
Okay.
And in the Philippines they fight with knives, right?
Yes, it's very.
And so and so they have the knives in reverse grip like this. So if you fought like this, you'd cut. They fight like this, and then also if you have your head back when they swing, if your head's already back, you can't move it back further.
Sure.
So the Filipinos would fight with the knives like this, with their head forward. Yeah. And so if the knife came, they could slip back like that. And so the Americans went to the Philippines, and the Philippines beat all of the Americans just straight up in boxing. And that's when it went from like the guard up like this with the head back.
Right, because in the old school kind of pictures, you always see like the kind of...
head back and the hands forward. Right. So then that's when the Americans started adopting this style, and that's what's,
That's mad.
Become used today, yeah.
And so you go out there and you train and you start, so you fall in love with self-defense, they kind of...
Yeah, well, I was already really into the martial arts, but, I wanted to train in the Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do concepts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And after 6 months, just, went back for another 6 months, another 6 months, had a 6-month visa, and then
so
basically just ended up staying to keep training in martial arts.
Okay,
but as you said, it was not so much the sport.
No.
It was more sort of realistic self-defense.
Yeah.
And then sort of mixed martial arts. Every sort of year or so, I'd have a fight just to test my skills.
Yeah.
But
do you remember the first fight you had?
Professional fight, I remember my first. Yeah, I was a 6-time world Sambo champion who trained under Gokor in LA. When they're really good at Sambo, which is really good at leg locks, and they're really good at throws, judo, and sort of stuff.
What was that like? Do you remember like the stress around it? Because like
a lot of stress for most of the fights, leading up to it, a lot of nerves and stuff. But you just got to push through those things, right? And so I remember that fight I won by armbar, which was cool. Happy about.
And so you train out there. You're also training, obviously, like the military forces for marshals and Air Force and Navy SEALs and that kind of stuff. And then one of your friends who'd been, I think, on the show, and I think I heard you say, I don't know if it's true, that you told your friends you used to look at the show and say, I could beat these guys. Yeah. And they're like, go on, James.
A couple of my roommates. Yeah. And the other thing, I was turning 30. So I was saying, I could beat these guys, and my buddies Mark and Tom, that used to live with me at the time, I was like, well, you should do it then. And then I didn't want to look back and say, well, I could have done that.
Sure.
And I was turning 30, and it was a big deal for me in my head. It was kind of messing with me a little bit. What do you think that was? Just I felt like I was growing up, and I hadn't really achieved anything. Yeah. I was teaching martial arts, and I was really enjoying it, but I'm becoming a man now. I'm 30 years old, I better do something. So I just thought, well, I'll try it. So I tried out for the Ultimate Fighter, and I got sort of recommended by Joe Stevenson, who'd won another episode of the Ultimate Fighter. Yeah. Put my name forward, went to the trials, the secondary trials, and then.
So this is when you flew back to the UK to fight English fighters to get into the house.
Yeah, I did a trial in the US. Then then you have to fight other British people to get onto the British team.
Because you were Team UK. You were representing Team UK.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I fought someone on the British team and won that fight, and then you fly back to Vegas. We were secluded in a hotel room for a week for some reason. I can't remember why.
Because you're not allowed to access to media. You can't normally.
No phone, no internet, no books, no nothing.
Because this was back in the day. This is like Tough 9, right? This is Ultimate Fighter 9. Yeah. It was when they did a Team UK versus Team. I still remember watching that team. Oh, right. I really do. Is this 2009? Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the link that I thought was quite interesting is that, to fast forward, so you went through your fights. You won 3 fights in the house, and you had the finale, and you ended up winning by submission. And you won the Ultimate Fighter 9. That's in 2009. Yep. The director of the Game Changers won his award in was it 2009? Yeah. The club. So that year, both of you had pinnacle moments in your careers, and that kind of parallel moment, which I thought was quite cool.
Well, it was a pinnacle at the time, but the pinnacle is going to be
with
the Game Changers.
I love that. Yeah. And so just, and I know that this is something that maybe for even this, it's 10 years ago now, but you go through that. And I re-listened to your interview, your Octagon post-fight interview with Joe Rogan, and you said, this is the best day of my life.
Right.
Looking back now, I'm going to guess you had a few more best days of your life since then.
Yeah, I got married, and then I had 2 amazing children, so those outranked winning the Ultimate Fighter. Yeah. But professionally, I think that's still the pinnacle so far.
100%. And I heard you also saying that it was really important that, I think if you look at your record before you retired, it was on paper 7, 3 or 4, and then you said, but they don't count the fights inside the house because of the exhibition or something?
Yeah, so fights in the Ultimate Fighter, because you have to release the record of a professional fight, like immediately. Yeah. And so fights on the Ultimate Fighter, obviously they record it and then they play it months later. So they call it an exhibition. Okay. So that they don't have to release that information. Yeah. And so my final record was 10-4. Yeah.
And just to kind of pause on that, because I know people listen to this going, oh, wait a second, Mark, ask him. So you're living in a house with all these fighters, right? Team UK, Team US, and I think I remember the whole dishes. There was something about like if you lose, you do the dishes in the house. But what was it like to live in a house of like these kind of alpha males, I guess, and everyone's trying to compete for the same thing? It was a 6-figure kind of contract with the UFC. Yeah. Like mentally, because I'm sure mentally that must have played a big role in that whole experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, I was, when I was a kid, I went to boarding school. Yeah. And so I was sort of used to that environment. So that was probably an advantage for me. Yeah, 100%. But it's definitely interesting when you're looking at people and they're like staring you down a little bit. Or DeMarcus Johnson, the whole time, maybe he sort of predicted that if he got to the final, he'd be fighting me, maybe. Yeah. So he always sort of had a beef, with me from the beginning. And not sure why, but...
Because your coaches were Michael Bisping. Yeah. And
Dan Henderson was the US.
Yeah. Which was the famous knockout that you did in that fight. That was pretty epic. Yeah. So fast forward, because I definitely want to get into the documentary. So then how was that like afterwards? Once you got in the UFC, did you find that there was still motivation to stay and compete, to try and get to the highest level?
Yeah, not as much. Sort of felt like it was a job at that point. Yeah. Because before it was like, I want to win the Ultimate Fighter, and that was the goal. Yeah. And then I won. I thought, oh, now I've got to keep fighting because I got this contract. So, I more enjoy the training aspect of it than the actual competing.
Sure.
I got more used to fighting in front of crowds and cameras.
Yeah, for people who've got no idea what that's like. By the way, I saw you used to rock a goatee when you used to be the cage. Yeah. But what is it like to walk into an arena, I guess, or a stage with a raging crowd kind of fight, like kind of cheering you on? Like, is there an adrenaline rush? Like, I'm just trying to get people listening to this, trying to get a bit of an idea of an experience of it.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it used to really affect me. Like, there's guys you're watching the UFC that don't look very good on television, and then you go with them in the gym, and they just destroy you. And then there's the other way around, where there's guys that you just totally smash in the gym, and then you watch them on TV, and they're just like amazing. So I think it just depends on, some people can really shine. I think, for me, I was always a bit stiff going in front of the cameras and, watching millions of people watching it around the world, maybe 20,000 people in the stadium. Yeah. And, I think the nerves can get to you. Yeah. So it affected me quite a bit early on. And the last couple of fights, I sort of went the other way, where I sort of started realizing this is all a facade. I fight in the gym every day. What am I worried about? And then I was like too far the other way, a little bit too calm. So you got to try and find that balance.
And was it hard for you to hang up the gloves and to kind of go to like, okay, I'm done with my professional kind of mixed martial arts career?
Yeah, it was. It was like that sort of love-hate thing where, you feel in great shape and you feel really good when you're on top of your game. But then, there's a lot of stress and pressure and trying to eat perfectly to try and, get your exact weight right, which I messed up a couple of times by a couple of pounds, and that messes with you. But and
that's the thing that's often not talked about. I had Greg Wooton on the show. He's a multiple Muay Thai champion. He used to be one of the number one ranked UK. And he said like body dysmorphia and like, the kind of approach of this unhealthy kind of approach of masculinity around that sometimes can be like, because you're so obsessed with your body image and how you're performing and stuff. Yeah. But then you get injured. You're sparring with a future heavyweight champion. You get injured, double knee injury. Yeah. And then you get a 6-month period where you need to basically do some research.
Yeah, well, I just thought, well, what can I do with my time, right? Because of 6 months where I really can't train. I was going to physical therapy. That was about it. Yeah. And so I thought, what can I do with my time? I started digging into the peer-reviewed research on nutrition for optimizing my recovery and then optimizing my performance. And that's what sort of started this whole thing. So I came across a study about the Roman gladiators. In Ephesus, Turkey, the only known gladiator burial site. There were 68 gladiator skeletons, 5,000 bones were analyzed, and the scientists determined that they were eating almost exclusively, if not completely, plants. Yeah. I thought, well, that just can't be true, because you've got to have meat and animal products to be strong and healthy, and for the protein and the calcium. So that really sort of got me digging into, is that true or is that a myth? And that's really how the documentary started.
Yeah, and I loved, I think I heard you say something like you felt cheated. Like there was this part of like you don't like to be lied to. Yeah. like this huge industry that has a vetted interest in actually making sure that we stay unhealthy, whether that's from the pharmaceutical big pharma companies or the meat and dairy industries. And so were you expecting going down this road that you'd be now here today kind of promoting this plant-based documentary?
No, not at all. I mean, I didn't go into it thinking, I'm going to look at plant-based diets. I was just looking at what is the best diet for optimal recovery to get through this injury as quickly as possible. And then once I'm, recovered, what's going to be the best for athletic performance, right? So for endurance and strength and recovery and getting through inflammation, which is a big deal, especially in fighting, right?
Yeah, I get that.
So no, it was just an organic path, really. And I thought I knew a lot about nutrition. Yeah. I would read magazines, right, and I'd go on the web, but I never really.
And nutritionists that are around fighters, right, like who basically tell you like you need to get your lean protein, whether it's keto diets or whatever it is, yeah. Yeah,
and so I just generally believed that, and I thought I knew a fair bit, but I never really dug into the actual scientific papers on it, because like who really has time to do that? So usually you'd read an article about a study and then you say, oh yeah, there was this study about, but you didn't really read the study. You just read like someone's interpretation. You don't know who it was funded by. You don't know if that was, and often when you go and look at the studies that are quoted in the media, the finding of the study isn't even what they said in the headline.
And can you trace back to who was funding that particular study?
That's a really big deal, right? Because there's like 100%. A vested interest.
Or they sometimes just take a quote out of a quote or a study, but they don't take the full context of, they did that study around with nurses, with dairy. I'm sure you're probably aware of that one, where they had an increase in breast cancer, but what they didn't notice is that they're increasing their dairy consumption. That's what led to that. And it's interesting, and I'm sure you may not be able to comment on it, but I saw the Good Morning Britain piece, and you walked in, and it was I felt like it was quite a hostile environment. You know, Piers Morgan was kind of go at you, and there's a study of this. And I thought, I loved it when those questions said, but where does that study come from?
Right.
Oh, it's a big study online, but okay, but who's the source?
Right.
You know?
I mean, well, first of all, he started off, Piers Morgan was saying...
There's no Kiwis.
No, that was one of the... Yeah, that is true. So there's not a single Kiwi. And then he said everyone in Germany eats meat because Patrick Babumi was on the show, the strongman. No, but one of the things he said, well, studies show that if you eat a vegan diet, it rots your brain by 20%. Yeah. He just makes stuff up. You know?
So I'm just curious, because this is something that I think is really important for people listening to this, because people might end up in that situation. How do you stay calm? Because you're on the show, you're here to promote your documentary. It's a great piece. Yeah. And I don't know if you were briefed before. If you probably already know Piers Morgan's reputation before you go on that show. But suddenly, like, he starts off even before you get on the show. He's like, and this co-host I thought was amazing. She was doing her best. Great. She was so good to try and keep it up. And he was just keep on bashing. He was vegan bashing because his Twitter rant he had on vegan sausage rolls from Greg's.
Well, I saw a clip of him eating the sausage roll, but the funny thing was, the sausage roll came in. He said, "Wait, is this the vegan one or the meat-based one?" Yeah. And he had to know. He said, "No, which one is it?" Yeah. Then they said, "Oh, it's the vegan one." Then he took a bite and said, and he was like spitting it out. Yeah. But I would be interested if you didn't tell him which one first 100%. And gave him two to try from. Because a lot of people can't distinguish between the two.
My general question is he really like that, or is he doing it as a persona?
I think he probably believes that a vegan diet isn't great. Yeah. And I think he just exaggerates it for the television. But I knew that he'd be hostile.
So you knew before you go in, you knew like, okay, this is going to be...
I'd seen a few clips of him talking about, to vegans. And so I knew it was going to be hostile, but I mean, the hardest thing was he just kept shutting me off. Like, he wouldn't let me finish my answer. Yeah. And then if I did say something that countered him, then you go back to Patrick and trying to just...
I know. I'll tell you what, I thought you handled it well, because I was just putting myself in your position going, fuck, that must have been tough to try and like... Every time you'd open your mouth, you'd go throw something. And in the end, he said, I'll watch the documentary. So I think, if anything, I saw some of the headlines. Piers Morgan will watch documentary, the Game Changers after meeting. So look, I think the message was passed.
It was worth it, yeah. No, and the other thing he said is that, there was a study that came out last week saying that a vegan diet is actually no good for you. Yeah. And I was thinking, what? Yeah, I don't know which one. Yeah. He's like, it was in Canada. And then I realized...
he said the surveys of all surveys. Jeremy was like, what does that mean?
I know. Well, first of all, it was nothing to do with vegan diets. Yeah. It was actually a study saying it was actually new recommendations, which is strange because like private companies don't usually give recommendations for the public. It's usually World Health Authorities or your National Health Authority. But anyway, it was a study saying... It was a meta-analysis of studies saying that there was no problem with red meat and processed meat. Like, you should eat as much as you want, basically. Keep eating it. Well, within a week, the New York Times came out showing that the authors didn't declare the industry ties that they had. So the same organization, it's called NutriRec. Mm-hmm. And we talk about this in the film. It's exactly what we talk about.
There's a piece of it. Yeah, but a woman talking, right? She's like, I'm a nutritionist, and absolutely eat meat. There is no evidence that links, cancer. You're just going, this goes deep.
Yeah, and it's more than that too. It's that funding, and in the film we talk about a company called Exponent, which does similar things. Promoted cigarettes, saying there's nothing wrong with it. She was basically trying to cast doubt on the danger of cigarettes, and now they do the exact same thing with meat. This company's doing the same thing, and fortunately, all of the the world's health authorities came out against the top researchers from Harvard. So Frank Hugh, who's the chair of nutrition at Harvard, said it was unethical and irresponsible. Dr. Walter Willett, who's the most published nutrition scientist in the world, he's the past chair of nutrition at Harvard, came out saying it was the most egregious abuse of data he'd ever seen. They purposely left out 14 studies in the meta-analysis because they didn't like the way that those looked.
Fake news.
Yeah. They totally misrepresented the science. And there's a lot of, if you keep digging, it takes hours and hours. We've started digging and to look at the industry ties. It's incredible.
Well, one thing that many people don't know about me is that I did a online course at Cornell University on a plant-based nutrition diet.
I've done that one as well.
Have you done? Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, the biggest takeaway I got from that was understanding you always have to look at the study and who funded it. Yeah. Why did they do that research? What's the recommendation? Who benefits it? Right. Because there's no advertising of bananas and avocados and stuff like that, right? It's like all dairy and meat and that kind of.
Yeah, there is some, but so Dr. Gregor on Nutrition Facts has done some work on.
Yeah, he's great.
So nutritionfacts.org, he's done some work looking at the preponderance of evidence, looking at all the studies, where you should be eating more plants and more meat. And then he's also done an analysis taking out all of the industry funding. So whether it's from, the meat and dairy, which obviously have crazy amounts of money, or even like the avocado board, which has a smaller amount of money, take all of those studies out and it shifts even more strongly in the direction of plant-based.
So one thing that I really appreciated about your documentary, and I really wanted to tell it to you in person, was that I thought, you and the team did a beautiful job at creating a storyline. Mm-hmm. And the storyline, really, I feel like you thought about, okay, what are the most common myths? Yep. What are the common criticisms that everyone says about a vegan diet? And how can we narrate this into a way that, look, by the end of it, if you haven't figured out like that's been debunking in one shape or form, then you're not paying attention. Yeah. Like, was that intentional, the way that you...
Well, a lot of it was actually just naturally my journey, right? So,
but you didn't want to be at the start. You didn't
no,
want to be...
I didn't want to be in front of the camera. Yeah. I want to be behind, just sort of getting it made, because I felt like I'd been lied to. The industry's lying to us, and the magazines pick up on that. And a lot of the media doesn't even realize. They just they see the studies, they don't look into who funded it. So I just felt like I'd been lied to my whole life about needing these animal products, when in fact... it was impairing my physical performance, and it was, increasing risk of many of the major chronic diseases. So I felt like I'd been lied to. Felt like I had to make a documentary with my partner Joseph Pace, and he basically, no, you should be in front of the camera, and then the other writer, and then Louie is like, yeah, no, you should definitely be. We'll tell your story, like finding out about the gladiators, and then all these questions that I had, whether you need calcium for, you need milk, for cow's milk for calcium. Yeah. Which is obviously, look at the Got Milk campaign in America, certainly. It's one of the greatest marketing campaigns 100%. Of all time.
Tony
in America.
Hawk was in, I remember him as a kid. Yeah. Like so many people would, Well,
they got the athletes on with the milk mustache.
That's right.
And they even got like government, government members involved. Yeah. Members of the government there, like promoting it on television. Like you'd never get that for any other industry. Right? It's got massive lobbying dollars. And then in the countries with the highest dairy consumption, you have high rates of fracture. Yeah. Right. So it's just...
it's mad.
Yeah.
When you get into it, I feel like I remember when we were talking about before. Once you start diving into it, you start going like, "This is crazy." Yeah. So okay. So you then the question that one of the questions is like, so at what point did you go, okay, Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to get involved in this project? Because you've got Jackie Chan as a producer, Djokovic. You've got Arnold Schwarzenegger featured in the documentary, Lewis Hamilton. Yeah. How, was it just a trickle effect, or was it kind of bit by bit?
Well, when we were talking to James Cameron, he started saying, well, Arnold's eating, mostly plant-based these days. So we thought, well, it'd be great to get his thoughts and, everything. And then people have come out recently saying, oh, well, Arnold's not actually vegan. But he never said he was vegan in the film. He even says maybe start with 1 day a week. Yeah. Which is what we're not trying to tell people. Yeah. Although I believe that a fully plant-based diet is optimal. Yeah. I think people should eat whatever they want. Yeah. And Arnold's cut down. He doesn't drink dairy anyway. Yeah. He's cut down on meat by 80%. Yeah. So he's a big advocate of, and he recognizes that the science is there. So if you're going to eat a steak, that's fine, but don't think of it as because you need it for muscle and strength, because you don't.
And what's been some of the criticism that you've heard so far? Like, what are some of the stuff, like the common questions or stuff that you might be surprised about?
So we've had there's a couple of articles that came out. One was in Men's Health that came out against the film. And the first thing was, they said this whole film is based on James finding a study about the gladiators. They said it wasn't a study, it was an article, it wasn't peer-reviewed, it wasn't in a medical journal, and there was no control group. Well, that's because they paused the film, saw what I was looking at on the screen, and that was an article, but it was about the study. Yeah. So obviously, I didn't say there was a study if there wasn't a study. Yeah. And in fact, the research was published in 2 peer-reviewed medical journals. There was a control group because they compared it against the general population of at the time of the other bones that were found. It was peer-reviewed. Second of all, the film wasn't built upon this premise of the gladiators. That was just an inciting incident.
Sure, it's like the door into this.
Yeah, it just got me looking into it. So there's a bunch of flaws. So they try to take down the film. Of course, the author of that article has 2 books on meat. They had 2 experts. One didn't have very good credentials. The other did have a PhD, but we dug into it and noticed that he's literally funded by the Beef Checkoff program. So he's funded as a paid speaker by the beef industry. And in fact, one of the doctors ended up writing an article online, and then Men's Health sort of edited their document, not fully. They still didn't recognize some of it, because they were saying, well, there's a difference. There's a difference in science between absolute risk and relative risk. So they were saying, although there was a 17% relative risk, there was only that, but the risk of I can't remember what cancer it was like 5%, right? And so the actual only absolute risk, they're saying, is only an additional 1%, takes you to about 6%, like 5.85. So they're saying, so you're saying 17% increased risk, but it's only really a 1% increased risk. That was one of the criticisms. Well, that's true. It was a 17% relative increased risk, and it was only a 1% absolute increased risk. But it meant that a difference between like an extra 100 and something thousand people dying per year in the United States alone from that cancer. So to like put down, trying to argue about the relative risk versus absolute risk when there's people literally dying from this disease, I think is madness, especially to the families of people are losing those, people to that disease.
Well, speaking about incidents and tragedies, and so it got personal for you. Like halfway through the shooting, at least from the narrative I've heard, like halfway through the filming, something happened in your family. Yeah,
exactly. So my father, unfortunately, he was eating what I thought in the past would be relatively healthy. He's not eating a bunch of like pizza and junk food, or drinking soda and cookies, and eating what I thought, was pretty healthy. He exercises and runs and is not overweight. But unfortunately, he had a heart attack, had to have, emergency heart surgery with 2 stents put in his heart. And, I've been really digging into nutrition for athletic performance and recovery. And then I started thinking, I knew that diet affected blood flow in the arteries. But I've been looking more at short term. And then I started realizing that the same biological mechanisms that affect performance also affect your health, right? And so the inflammation, which if you reduce inflammation, you can get through the recovery process faster, which allows you to work out again, sooner and more effectively. And also, when you have more inflammation, your blood flow can't flow as much, so you reduce the inflammation by eating the right foods. So you can get more oxygen, more nutrients to your muscles. So those are the types of things I was thinking. But when you look at inflammation, it's really the root cause of all of the major chronic diseases, of heart disease, diabetes, cancer.
And then one meal can impact that. That's one of the documentaries. People are inviting them to go and check it out. They actually show how one meal dramatically can impact your blood flow.
Yeah, a heavy animal-based meal impairs blood flow by up to 50% in your arteries for 6 to 8 hours. And then, of course, what do most people do? Again, they have another animal-based meal, and it's constantly doing that. So there's that acute sort of short-term impact. When you do that over time, your arteries are stiffening. You can produce less nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, allows your arteries to open up, get more oxygen, more nutrients, like I said. And then, so over time, these things lead to things like heart disease, which is, in my father's case, he had a heart attack. Fortunately, he survived the heart attack, and now he's shifted to a plant-based diet. So, and he's doing really well.
Yeah, that's mad. And it's interesting because I was chatting with Josh Balding, the co-founder of Vivo Life, about this. He's vegan. He came on the show, and he said, "I heard there's something about erections," and I was like, "Yeah." And I thought, I thought it was a genius way that you did it, because I've seen loads of documentaries now, because I told you, right, I went this journey of plant-based in 2014. I saw loads of documentaries. I think everyone needs the document that's going to help them on their journey. Some people need more graphic, some people more,
Some people need erections.
but I thought if you're gonna hit where it counts, then it was such a brilliant. Was it called the Rigid study or something like
that? Well, the device is called the Rigiscan.
That's it. That's it.
That's the brand, but it's known as a penile plasmograph.
Okay.
And so basically, well, first of all, the research into what you eat for a meal and the impairment of blood flow, or the improvement of blood flow after a meal, that's been studied for like 20 plus years.
Okay.
A lot of that work's been done by Dr. Robert Vogel, who was in the film. He's the co-chair of the cardiovascular committee for the NFL, and he's the one that we did the blood test for with the Miami Dolphins, where you can look at the blood and you see what's called the postprandial lipemia. It just means like fat in the blood after a meal.
Yeah.
And that's when you impair blood flow. So that stuff's been done for years. So we knew that arterial function was affected, but it's never been tested with erections. But the arteries that go to the penis are actually the smallest in the body. Don't say speak for yourself, because I've done that. Someone said that on 3 interviews already.
I don't. No. Because I think is it? Oh gosh, the firefighter.
Rip Asselston.
Thank you, because I remember I saw him one day in a talk show the Bic, the pen, that tube. Yeah. That's like how thin.
Oh, inside of the Bic pen. Yeah.
That's mad. That's how small the artery is. Right,
and so the penis really for men is the sort of canary in the coal mine. Okay. Urologists call it. So if you basically, arterial disease anywhere is arterial disease anywhere. So it's going to show up in the smaller arteries first, right? So if you're getting erectile dysfunction, it's very likely that you're going to die of a heart attack, basically. Yeah. And so we just thought it'd be interesting to see. So we took this, the experiment we've done with Dr. Vogel. Yeah. And, we were talking to Dr. Aaron Spitz, who's the lead delegate of urology for the American Medical Association.
Literally wrote the book on penises.
He did. He's got a book called The Penis Book. So we asked him, we said, hey, I did this experiment with Dr. Vogel and it impairs blood flow. Has this ever been done before? So he'd never heard of it being done before, but he dug into the literature and checked. There was nothing showing, nothing from a diet affecting animal foods, certainly in the short term. Yeah. Affecting blood flow. And so he said, well, there's this device called the Rigiscan, and you can basically test erectile function. And it was actually used to see if people had erectile dysfunction. But it can test the duration, rigidity, and circumference of erections. And I didn't even know this, but every night, as a healthy male, has a number of erections.
Yeah, I did not know that until I saw the documentary. I thought that was mad.
Yeah, so you have a number of erections while you're sleeping. Yeah. As part of every night, it's part of normal function. Yeah. And so you can test those erections. So on one day, an animal-based meal, another day, the plant-based meal, as you've seen. And you can just see it like as expected. Yeah. A big improvement in both rigidity, circumference, and duration.
Well, mate, if that doesn't sell it, I don't know what will. And I know we're pressed on time, so I want to be conscious of your time. Yeah, no many more questions I'm going to ask. One of the questions I want to ask is like, getting in the movie business is a very different business, I guess, than fighting. Yeah. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe you'll correct me. How has it been for you to readapt to a whole new kind of world? Because now you're talking about contracts and deals and distribution and producers. I don't even know what it is. Yeah. What was that like for you?
I think if you're dedicated and have a good drive, then you can pretty much accomplish anything, right? So I don't think it matters if it's like physically, literally fighting or fighting to get this interview with somebody or you raise some money or whatever it is. I think if you're determined, then you really have that drive. And there's some interesting like core concepts of fighting. Like there's risk to reward ratio, which is a really important concept in fighting, or economy of motion, being efficient. And I think you can apply these principles to business or to filmmaking or whatever else. So, but really it takes a team, right? So people are like, you made this film. And so Joseph Pace and I, we were the most instrumental people in getting it made. We were the producers. You control all of the film and, decide who you're hiring and raising funds and all this sort of stuff. But it takes this whole team. So I was just very fortunate to put together, or Joseph and I were very fortunate to put together this really good team of people to get it made, because we didn't know how to make a film, other than the YouTube, like learning on YouTube. YouTube, you can just learn, and the dishwasher's broken, go on YouTube. Every time. True. Yeah. Well, I need to lay a floor, go on YouTube. Yeah.
So we talked about like when you won the Ultimate Fighter season 9, that was like the pinnacle of that moment of your life. Yeah. What's next for you? Like, what's the next kind of horizon that you want to climb?
I mean, right now it's just I want to be able to encourage plant-based eating, give people the resources. So since the film came out, we've put a lot of resources on the website GameChangersMovie.com. Yep. Because 5 out of 6 people that go meat-free usually end up going back. Yeah. And the number one reason cited is social pressure, but the second most cited reason is it's not knowing. Yeah. It's like accessibility and convenience and not knowing what to do and resources.
That's true.
So we've put on recipes and shopping tips and tips on transitioning, because for a lot of people they can do it overnight. Some people just go cold tofu, yeah. But a lot of people can't do that, and I think for most people it's probably better to just switch over time, maybe start one meal a day or something. So we're putting all those tips, and we're going to have an online community, because I think it's important to have support, both family and friends, but also online, where people can ask questions of our experts or our athletes, or just amongst the community, right? Just ask other people, like, hey, I usually make this recipe with an egg, and how do I switch it out?
Yeah, the French pancake, the French toast that you put the recipe recently on the Instagram looked very tasty.
It's all great.
Look, before we wrap up the last kind of final questions, I want to take a moment just to acknowledge you, James, because, well, first of all, the first time I contacted you was 2013. It was even before the podcast was a podcast.
Wow.
And we made it happen. I really appreciate you taking the time to come here today. But more than that, what I loved about the documentary, I thought it was an aspirational documentary.
Right.
It wasn't a make you feel bad, a judgmental, a bullying, a pointing finger. It was more like, look, whatever you do, whether you go vegan, plant-based, or you just have a bit more veggie,
right,
it's an upgrade.
Yeah.
And look at these elite athletes, and we didn't even say this, but I just want to say it for you. There's a higher percentage of athletes at the top of the game who are plant-based than there is population.
Yeah,
it's just like 20%. I think you said somewhere.
So that was at the time we were filming 2 of the top 10 boxing heavyweights were 20% versus 1. But there are some studies showing elite athletes shifting. There's higher level than the general population eating plant-based diets.
Yeah, and what I loved about your story is that you didn't stop at the Ultimate Fighter 9. You kind of reinvented yourself into this whole new purpose, this whole new kind of mission.
Yeah.
And it feels like you're talking to the people who need it most. And I'm gonna put myself in there, like men, right? It feels like it speaks to women and men, but I feel like men who watch this, if you are not touched in some way, if you're not thinking like, I'm gonna have a bit more veggies, like I'm gonna try and cut down a little bit of meat, then I don't know what they're thinking. So thanks for putting that documentary out there. I think it means a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, just to touch on the male issue there is like, no, obviously I identify as a man, and for me, it really was an underlying myth. There was the myth of like you need animal protein to be strong and healthy, but I think there was like a core underlying myth of this, like, real men eat meat, and I think that 100%. Was why, that was my personal sort of experience, and then so that's why there's sort of like a lot of them. And then when you look at the studies, 8 out of 10 plant-based eaters currently are female. Men 18 to 39 or 18 to 45, somewhere in that range, eat twice as much meat as women do. Yeah. And it's just, there's a stigma against it, right? 100%. But especially, there's already stigmatized, about being vegan or vegetarian. Yeah. People think like long-haired, skinny, sort of tree hugger,
pale,
which is nothing wrong with any of that, really. For me, it just didn't identify with it.
And that can be unhealthy both ways. You can be an unhealthy vegan. You can be an unhealthy...
Totally. I think
crisps and Oreos are vegan.
Exactly. That's one good thing to point out, right? Yeah, crisps, Oreos, Pepsi.
Fries.
Yeah, all that stuff. So you could be eating all of that, and that it doesn't have any animal products in it, but it's not healthy. So the main split for me is get as many of your calories from plants as possible, if not 100%. And then within the plant sort of thing, plant space, get as much whole plant foods as possible, and like as little processed plant foods. But
cool,
it doesn't have to. We like to say it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's all or something.
I get that. Last round of questions. What's one thing that most people don't know about you?
I like magic. I'm like a bad amateur magician.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Did not know that. What does being unconventional mean to you?
I think just like thinking outside the box, and also not being constrained by what other people think you're capable of. Because during this process, you never get James Cameron, to be involved with that project. It's a documentary. It's like, you're too small. You don't have money. He's a massive. So don't let other people, put you down. Just go out and do what you want to do, and really set your mind on it.
Love it.
Yeah.
You're in Piccadilly Circus, if you still remember Piccadilly Circus in London, despite the fact of being in the US for so long.
20 years.
20 years. And you could get the billboard, that kind of big digital billboard, and you could have a message there that everyone would read and everybody would see on their way to work or on their way to a night out. What would you want that message to read?
Well, regarding not go see the Game Changers on Netflix. No, I'd say all protein originates in plants. Animals are just the middlemen. Because I think that gets people thinking. Because that really is like with a lot of meat eaters, they go, never thought about that before. It's like the protein that I'm eating. Where did my protein get its protein from? So in terms of I want people to cut out the middleman. That's what you do in business, right? Again, efficiency. I just think. We got to like help dispel this myth, and I want people, to eat healthier. I want people to live longer. I want a better planet. and just think plant-based diet's the way to go.
I get that. Cool. Where can people find you most online? Where do you hang out most?
So the website's gamechangersmovie.com, and then on social media, it's Game Changers Movie on both Instagram and Facebook, and GC Movie on Twitter, and then my personal Instagram is Lightning Wilks.
Cool. Final question. How much of an American accent do you switch back to when you get back to the US?
Well, I can't even tell, honestly. I think I sound English, but people in England don't think I do. But I've been here like 5 days now, and it starts going back. Yeah.
Cool. James, an absolute honor. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and all the best.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Appreciate it.
All right, people, that's it. An incredible conversation with James Wilks, the producer behind The Game Changers. And I really, really recommend you go and check out the documentary. No matter what your take is on the meat industry, on becoming a plant-based athlete or whatever it is, just go and check it out, because I think it's going to debunk some myths. It's going to help you and empower you to make better choices. And whether you diminish meat or not, you're going to enjoy it. It's a great show, and it's got some ton of information and some inspirational athletes in there. So, as always, make sure to tune in next week as we tune back in to turn your message into movement. I'll see you then. Hey gang, I wanted to remind you that if you want to launch your podcast and you don't want to spend years and a ton of money trying to figure out how and make mistakes along the way, then head over to theunconventionalists.com, click on online courses, and make sure to enter the code PODCASTTRIBE to get 20% off my brand new online video program that's called How to Launch a Successful Podcast from Scratch. I've poured everything I know into that, my love, my heart, my knowledge, and my know-how for you. You can literally take that course from the comfort of your own home and launch a world-class podcast within days. So stop waiting, stop wasting time, head over to theunconventionalists.com and get your ticket to my online video program now. I'll see you in there. Today's episode is brought to you by Vivo Life. Now, we all know the critical importance of protein to sustain a healthy diet. And I'd love to sit here and tell you that we should all get that from whole foods. But the truth is, like me, you might be living a busy lifestyle, and I'm often running from meeting to meeting. And I was looking for the perfect protein powder that could help me sustain my energy throughout the day and also recover after my workouts. Problem is, most proteins out there are filled with sweeteners, artificial flavoring, and ingredients. And because they're made from mostly dairy products, tend to not really agree with my digestive system. So that's why in 2014, I started exploring and experimenting with plant-based proteins. But the truth is, back then, the taste, the texture, the smell was just a little nasty. And so I just put up with it because I was looking for a plant-based protein that was good for your health, backed by science, and didn't do too much harm to the planet. But in 2017, something changed. I actually came across Vivo Life. Vivo Life make 100% natural health supplement and products that deliver straight to your door via carbon neutral delivery. Now, let me tell you, I was blown away. Not only did the protein taste great, it also looked amazing, it mixed well, but beyond that, it was by far the healthiest protein on the market that I could find. The reason being is that in every serving you get 25 grams of plant-based protein, and it's not just any protein, it's fermented protein, which is amazing for digestion. On top of that, you get 6 grams of branched-chain amino acids in each serving, and you also get some turmeric extract, which is phenomenal for anti-inflammatory properties, which helps me speed up my recovery. Now, what I usually do after a workout is I'll use some Madagascan vanilla or the salted Maca caramel. Those are my two favorite flavors. I'll throw in a banana, maybe some dark leafy greens, some almond milk, some water, maybe some flaxseed, shake it all up, and it tastes amazing. So if you're looking for a healthy, natural, plant-based protein that's going to get you results, tastes amazing, and does good for the planet, then head over to vivolife.co.uk and use the discount code MARK when you check out to get 10% off your first order. And remember, every purchase you make using the discount code helps support the Unconventionalists podcast. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for keeping the lights on in the studio.